So a little bit of background. I'm an active angel investor. I'm an active VC. I founded New York Angels here in New York. I personally invested in over 80 startups. But I'm not just a random VC walking in here to talk about APIs. I did my first API as an entrepreneur about 25 years ago, which actually was for this watch, believe it or not. This was the Wristmac. Released in 1988, and we actually had an API so you could put data in and pull it out of your watch. Then went on to do APIs as an entrepreneur in the wireless data space for paging and all the way through. So I know a little bit about APIs, and the amazing thing about this is that this is one of the very few cases I can think of where the VC world, these silly rich venture capitalists who don't know anything at all about actual business or starting things, actually have it right and know more than all the entrepreneurs and startups out there. Because VCs realize how important this stuff is. A quick show of hands. How many people here are either in product management or marketing for your companies? Raise your hand. Okay, now keep the hands up for a second. How many of you were sent here by somebody else, by your boss, VP, or whatever it is? Okay, then you're here mostly by yourself, on your own. That's really good, because what VCs have gotten and got quite a while ago is how extraordinarily important the whole concept of APIs are. And in talking to companies again and again and again, I am completely bowled over by product folks and marketing folks who just don't get it. As we came in here, I saw this wonderful little handout they've got. The API is now the single most powerful strategic weapon in business. No bullshit. It really seriously is. You can think about APIs the way we think about APIs as investors. It's like those secret spices that you put on your chicken or whatever on barbecue. It's actually monosodium glutamate, but umami. It's that extra punch it up. APIs really, they can't take a really crappy product and make it something that everybody wants to buy. But they can take any viable product or service that you've got and absolutely take it to the next level. What we're talking about here is an order of magnitude change. And this is so important that VCs see this. And one of the, I would be very surprised if when any of you are out raising capital, one of the questions that you get is not, so what does your API offer, or who's using your API? Because what an API does is it lets the entire world access you. It turns all of the world out there into not only customers but evangelists for your product. It is one of the cheapest customer acquisition things you can possibly get. As a matter of fact, I'm not a random VC here because I was the second investor in Mashery. When Orrin Michaels presented this, I said, holy moly, somebody has actually got it. This is years and years ago. And his original venture pitch was turnkey data solutions for API vendors or some ridiculous thing, which back then didn't make any sense. Who's selling an API, right? So I said, this is ridiculous. What you are doing is changing the world. And in talking with Orrin and in looking at this and talking among VCs, what's clear to us is that the world is changing rapidly, right? So, who would have thought that IBM could ever be dislodged as the power player in the computer space? Well, along comes Microsoft. Who would have thought that Microsoft could ever be dislodged? And the internet comes along. Who could have thought that AOL, remember AOL with the coasters, CDs they were sending out, could ever get rid of its stranglehold on the internet? And then along comes Google. And so when you see company after company falling down, and what is the next Google killer? What is the next Facebook killer? And the answer is, I believe very, very strongly, and many other investors believe, it's not going to be one big company. It's going to be the universe of all companies using these APIs, using the API from Capital One and from Etsy and from all the things you've seen. The ability now for companies to start really, really small, one developer in a garage, and tap into the shopping cart, and tap into the rewards, and tap into the OAuth, and from Capital One or Facebook. Tap into your identity in multiple systems, pulling it together. You can now take a tiny bit of code, put in your secret sauce, your value add, and then leverage all this work that all these people are doing out of there. And so that's why it's so important on the receiving end. And so that's why it's so important on your end as the provider end. I mean, I don't think I would invest in a company today that hadn't at least thought about having an API. Because otherwise, you're out there as an isolated tower by yourself. But put in an API, and assuming you have a business that makes any kind of sense out there, all of a sudden you have the world as your evangelists. And so nowadays, in addition to being an investor and an angel and a VC, as an entrepreneur back in the dark side or the light side of the house, I run a company called Gust. And Gust provides the platform for basically all the world's organized angel investors. We have over 150,000 companies who are using Gust today to manage their investor relations. And on the other side, we have over 50,000 accredited investors and over 1,000 venture funds and angel groups who use Gust to process all of their applications for funding. So we're building this whole two-sided ecosystem, but if you think about the data exhaust that we have in there, that's really impressive. We have all this data on companies controlled by the company, of course, but we have information that is current and up to date because they're using this to report to their investors and deal with them. So we have actually ourselves implemented a whole API portal using Meshery, and that will be coming out with our next rev in January, which will let people access all this information with appropriate permissioning across the entire set of data that we've got. It'll let people extend our capabilities to do things we haven't even thought of. And that's one of the great things about an API. If you have a well-designed API, you don't know what the hell it's going to be used for. If you put your data out there, you will find that other developers, these young kids in a garage, or people you've never heard of in Kazakhstan, will be able to take your data and do things with it. You, of course, control ultimately the use, but things that you can't imagine that will be used to extend your data and your platform will be absolutely critical, maybe critical to your future growth. So I will be very, very quick, and I will just tell you that from an investor's point of view, and virtually every investor that I know understands this and thinks about this when looking at a company. And so the fact that you're here looking to learn about APIs is really, really good and really important, and I would encourage you to keep learning and get your API going. Thanks.